Dude, this is gonna be fun.
I love your profile picture. I hope my new headshots this year are better.
The irony here is Craig, that profile picture is a little old. You can see it a little bit more. I got a little bit more gray here, rocking the hat. I'm all blacked out, so you don't see all the weight I've gained over COVID. It's just real life. What's up, everybody? My name is Doug Landis. I'm here with my good friend, Mr. Craig Rosenberg, and we're going to have some fun here. It's just the two of us. Instead of between two ferns, this is going to be a conversation between two friends. Craig, why don't you tell everybody who you are?
I'm just floored by how great that intro was. Did you come up with that on the fly? The two friends versus two firms?
Yeah,
that was amazing.
Dude, on the fly, man. I tell you what, the one thing that I will tell any person that is in sales, regardless of your experience, go take an improv class.
Yeah,
because it teaches you how to be creative on the fly.
That is a great call.
That's where it comes from.
So I'm the chief platform officer at Scale Venture Partners. So similarly to Doug, I work with the portfolio, post investment on everything from, marketing, demand gen, sales development, sales, customer success, and
the works.
Pleasure to be here.
Tell everybody about Scale.
About
Scale.
So we are a Series A primarily investor, right? And we have about 50 plus investments in the portfolio. We're still actively investing. We're obviously deep like everyone else in AI, but we feel like we've got a really good point of view there, and we've been able to make some great investments. So I'm just excited to work with the companies that I work with.
Amen. And you guys work with some great companies. I did everybody a massive disservice. I didn't actually fully introduce myself. So I'll just take a second there. Doug Landis, I'm a growth partner at Emergence Capital. Interestingly enough, our firms are actually very somewhat competitive. We both are, our sweet spot is Series A B2B SaaS, right? So for us, 20 years ago, we made a bet that all software was going to move to the cloud. I think that was a pretty good bet with bets, by investing in Salesforce, Zoom, Box, Viva, Yammer, SteelBrick, SuccessFactors, you name it. We've done all right. Today, we're much more kind of hypothesis and thesis driven. AI is a pretty hot topic, and we'll get into that in just a second. But we've had a thesis and been investing around that category. Actually, I think so at Scale for a while. We're like 8-9 years deep into it. We call it coaching networks. I will say the reason why I actually know Scale before Craig actually got there was Rory, your founder, the chief over there, was an early investor in Box.
Yes.
I worked at Box back in the day. So the one thing I will say about Scale that I really appreciate is that you guys are so maniacal about data, and you're so incredibly data driven. And I want to ask you a few questions about that, how that actually kind of parlays into you working with your portfolio companies, just to kind of set the stage for everybody. Our objective for this conversation between Craig and I, and it is just the two of us, is to just share our insights on how we think about guiding our portfolio companies, and also early stage founders, early stage go-to-market leaders. And I think what's going to be really interesting in this conversation is how have things changed in the last 12 months, and how are our approaches different now working with our companies, given that the markets are so dramatically, we'll just use the word interesting. Man, it's crazy. So Craig, let's set the stage here for a second. And God, the Apple Watches are great, but do you know how many times Siri decides to butt into my conversations? It's pretty crazy. Take it off.
Yeah, I have Siri butts in for me, and I don't even have an Apple Watch, so.
So Craig, I'm curious here. A lot of people don't really understand what we do and what our jobs are, right? This platform function is something that's really only been around just over a decade. I've been doing it for 7 years now at Emergence. But why don't you explain to everybody kind of like how you think about your world, and kind of how do you spend your days? What does a day in the life of Craig look and feel like?
I don't know about you, man. Before I'm going to do the long-winded Rosenberg answer, which may parlay us into a totally different conversation where we have to come back and repeat the question to each other.
I love it. You're like the Jason Bateman from Smartless. And I'm going to channel my inner Will or next.
Oh, man.
I gotta get my voice has got to change a bit, but yeah, it's, okay.
I can only hope you, I can only hope you crush me the way Will crushes Jason.
Oh God,
so yeah, but I mean, I've had a lot of people asking for meetings to ask about, what we do. And
totally.
It's been pretty amazing. And I just want to, I'm going to go into this, but maybe we can talk about it. Everyone asks me how, like, they're trying to figure out how they get in there. And it's like,
100%.
I have no idea. I have no idea. Dale Chang, who is like our operator.
Love Dale.
Yeah. I'd known him for years, and that's how I got in. So it's like everyone's asking for advice, and I'm like, God, I don't know. So I don't know if you can give advice to them. We could do that.
Yeah.
Talk about what we do all day.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I get the question on a weekly basis. Hey, how do I do what you do? I've been a sales leader for a long time, maybe a CRO, and I want to get into venture. Everybody, by the way, thinks that venture is the place to, like, you go to die, so to speak, or you go to retire. And I would say there's a lot of nuance to what we do that it's important to be mindful about. But getting in is really hard. I mean, it's like less than 1% of 1% of 1%. And the reality is it's like you need to have built your brand and a level of expertise on the go-to-market side that is deep and rich. And oftentimes when I tell people, it's like, okay, so you've been a sales leader, great. So what are the things that you could bring to the table to an early stage company? If you've been a late stage sales leader, a late stage CRO, then you need to go find firms and funds that do late stage investment, because that's kind of your sweet spot, right? I would argue that you and I both worked with startups and worked in startups and understand. I mean, you started your own company, Topo, from scratch, right? And so, like, we understand the building process. And largely in our job, our job is pattern recognition. And so, like, you and I have the pattern recognition skills at an early stage to know what it takes to actually, hire the right team, build out the right models, build out the right metrics to measure the business, right? So, because we've just seen it over and over and over again. And so people, that want to get in, it's like, figure out what your sweet spot is, what you love to do, and what you're comfortable with, and where you have the experience, and look for firms that align with that background and experience, and then anchor around something that you think is kind of your superpower, right? So, like, for me, my sweet spot is working with the early stage founders and the go-to-market leaders, helping them to hire the right person, build out the right model, redo their whole messaging and positioning, help them reorient their first call deck, help them close early stage deals, all of that kind of fun stuff that you would normally do if you were working at an early startup.
Right.
Anything else you would add to that?
Well, what I would add on, let's just take, and we both have this, but like one of the things about your experience that's really important on the early stage was that, you built your reputation enabling the front line. Because I always love that about you. Let's just do a love. No, because, when you would speak, you were like one of my go-tos with Topo, right? And like, because you weren't on the ivory tower and can't be. And you can't, like, that's when you're talking about early versus late, one of the key superpowers down here is you actually, like, when you're talking to a founder, you're actually going to be like, you know what, I need to see the script. Yeah, and you can't say, you know what, go call this guy. It's like, no. We have to understand those things. We have to understand, like, even the littlest thing, like a post demo follow-up or whatever.
Totally.
So, like, because you were in the trenches and across a lot of things, because you were doing enablement, you were doing operational decision making, you were operating the front lines at basically companies that were at warp speed. That's the kind of experience that is really helpful here. I would say that.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with that.
With Topo, I had to get in the weeds all the time, right? And it was like, we'd go in, we'd do a strategy assessment and come back with strategic stuff, which, by the way, was really fun. But like, we were paid to put it in action, which meant we had to dive down into the front lines, marketing, sales, whatever it is.
Totally.
And that was like the key experience here. And I think, so, I mean, like, I'm not surprised you've been so successful just because of, how you're not just your experience, but how you think. You have talk to execs, and you have the to go talk to an SDR. That's pretty.
And that's, to your point, I think that's really important, right? So look, I don't know all the answers. I mean, look, to be honest, nobody's really going to know all the answers because there's so many variabilities in building an early stage company or scaling an early stage company to a mid stage, late stage growth company. There's a lot to know and understand. I often get the questions like, well, what's the benchmark for the appropriate, SDR comp model and a PLG, in a PLG sales motion? It's like, well, hold on a second. Let's unpack that question here for a second. Why do you have SDRs in a PLG sales motion? And should we rethink what their actual job responsibility is, right? So a big part of it is just kind of unpacking what these late leaders, whether they're founders or go-to-market leaders, know and don't know, and to try and help them kind of anticipate some of the things that they're likely going to face. The other thing is also just like, you don't have to have all the answers. Just make sure you know how to go find all the answers.
Right.
I mean, and that's a huge part of what we do because we're that resource. Hey, I'm actually really curious, how often or what do you do to navigate the relationship between founder and go-to-market leader and you? Because oftentimes, I don't know if you find this, but oftentimes we get kind of stuck in the middle because sometimes we could play therapist between founder and go-to-market leader because founders don't know everything to expect from their go-to-market leaders, whether it's sales or marketing or even customer success. And then oftentimes too, I feel like sometimes founders may make suggestions or want to do something in the business. I don't know about you, but I've seen this before and I'm like, I don't know if that's the best approach or the right idea, because I know how that's going to impact the rest of the sales team, or how that's going to impact kind of top of the funnel pipeline. But it's a really sensitive kind of touchy path to kind of navigate because at the end of the day, our whole relationship and our success is predicated on trust, right? Everyone's got to trust us. How have you navigated those kind of murky waters?
Well, so I don't think there's any avoiding the triage, and how we play that is I think it depends, man. I mean, it was funny. You asked like a question, but it was actually the answer to that is yes. Like, it's a tough situation, and I think one of the things that would lead to a later question. So I'll promise we'll park it because we didn't answer the first one. We're already doing the Doug Craig thing. Is the playbooks did change. So if you go to someone who 3 years ago was successful and you come back and say, we want to do PLG SDRs, the playbook changed, man. And so actually there's some really important things where you go to a show, you hear about how so-and-so built their business. It actually may not be relevant actually at all. Like a lot of the things, probably some percentage of it. As you said, we have to unpack that. By the way, neither side knows that. Like the go-to-market leader, the go-to-market leader is always struggling in a series. It's hard. It is such a hard job, man. Oh my God. I respect them forever.
It's often why, a sales or marketing leader, there's two aspects to that, why it's so hard, right? Because first of all, it's often because the sales leader themselves are like, I'm good from 2 to 20, right? And then once I get past 20, then maybe I'm going to start to cap out. But the problem is I also think a lot of founders kind of short side the potential of their sales leaders. When something starts going a little sideways, the market's crazy, maybe your messaging is off, your pricing and packaging hasn't changed in 12 months, you haven't come out with new capabilities, you got new competition, and guess what? So maybe revenues soften just a little bit because, look at the market that we're in right now. And by default, the founder, CEO, or maybe even the board's like, maybe we need a new sales leader. Maybe we need a new marketing leader. My suggestion is always like, take the old construction approach, which is like, measure twice, cut once. Like slow down a bit and get some perspective and get some other opinions from folks like us or your board partners, or if they have, platform folks, to truly understand how that company compares to the others in the portfolio, because oftentimes they're in their own little silo, right? Because right now, like so many of our companies are just kind of struggling and have had to downgrade revenue expectations, and it's like, oh, we need a new sales leader. It's like, time out. Everybody is struggling right now. So let's really dig into why you think it's time for a new sales leader. Because I think we can invest more in developing our leaders to get past that 20 mark, to get to 30, 40, even 50 mark, if they've got the right, skills and tools.
And by the way, to get through this moment, like, yeah, I was tired. This wasn't in the portfolio, but they were telling me a story about they'd missed a PR opportunity. And they're like, oh man, the founder or CEO just gave me the business. And I had to say, I'm not being flip and I'm not being rude, but you made me fire the CMO and everyone in the PR department. And he's like, well, go get them again. Go back and get me them back again. And it's like, because as you said, like, look, we are in a moment here now.
Yeah.
And to just throw the baby out the bathwater is not always, it's not always the right decision. Now, there is a good decision, which is if the go-to-market leader is not leading change to get through these moments, then yeah, that's bad.
Totally.
We have to decide, as you said, is it coachable? Because look, I mean, it's been a long time since a lot of the folks from our generation have seen this moment. And then some of the younger folks have never had a blip.
Never. They have 14 years of frothiness.
Yeah, they're like, hey, San Francisco doesn't have earthquakes anymore. It's also really sunny. It's just like LA. If you buy a house, it goes up. And if you join a startup, it's pretty cool. You make millions. It's like, you know, and so like, yeah, so this is a coachable moment. It does help since you and I have seen nuclear events in tech. So I think that's a really important part of this. I think but anyway, you know, one of the things I've been like doing is the team, the founder and the go-to-market leader, which I just try to identify something to go work on. And that allows me to actually peel away from all of the dynamics and just be focused on, you know, some deliverable or outcome.
How do you identify that? How do you pick that?
I'll tell you, I did want to do a shout out, Robert Kaler, who I know you like, who used to be at Topo. He's helping me
nice
at scale. And so we have so there's multiple parts. You mentioned metrics. Like one of the things that we do with our dashboard is we look for anomalies or areas for upside. And that often tells us the general area to focus on. Then we have sort of like ways that we assess and audit, right? You know, one of the things that's been so powerful that we've embraced is like recordings, call recordings. I mean,
totally.
People like just I'm like, no, you guys, we did record, but we used it for like malicious reasons back then. Like actually now we've figured out that like, yeah, we can record and we can learn so much. And so like, we'll do a sales call diagnostic depending on the issue, right? So we dive in where we see issues, and we have like a set of questions and second level metrics that we look at, but also nothing beats sort of just diving in and sort of getting a plan there. And then we'll come back and say, look, you know, we agree. So we'll ask, and they'll say, look, here are the 3 areas we think you should work on. And then we'll go back and we'll say, we agree. Let's do this one. We're going to run off and we'll come back to you. It helps on the stuff. It allows us to all agree on something we want to go change in the business, and we go help everyone do it.
Okay, Jason, hold on one second. Sorry, Craig. Jason Bateman. Craig. Okay, question for you. Question. So the last 12 months clearly are maniacally different from a metrics perspective, and some of the signaling that you're seeing now from, you know, the previous 12 and 12 before that, et cetera, and of course years before that. What are you noticing? So the things that the anomalies that you're seeing in the data, my hunch is you're seeing a pattern, because I certainly am across our portfolio, and I'll share some of those things that I've been seeing, and also some of the things that kind of we've been double clicking into to really kind of get to the root of what's really going on. Because it's so interesting. You see one data point, you're like, interesting. Now let's dig into that. But I'm seeing kind of the same thing across the majority of our portfolio companies. I'm curious what you're seeing, or what are some themes that you've been noticing.
Yeah, well, it feels like this is going to be an amazing part of our conversation here, because there's themes everywhere, right? That's one thing I want to mention, everyone. But on the high level, look, the one that's sort of glaring is is the attention to churn and customer retention issues.
Yep.
Because there was definitely some sorting out, and I'm not sure we're done, and I'm not sure it's always the vendor's fault.
Yeah.
You know, sales reps' fault. I mean, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
We went old school. It's like, remember Oracle, they used to sell term license agreements and they had all this shelfware. And we're like, oh, no, it's SaaS. You don't have to do that anymore. And then we're like, oh, okay, well, you have 100 sales reps. You should buy 1,000 licenses, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And so
hitting everybody right now, right? Like I had 100 reps and I only have 10, so I'm downgrading. What are you noticing from a churn standpoint? Is it product deficiencies? Is it just like this is just a nice to have, not a must have anymore? Is it like, oh, competition's undercutting you? Like, what are you noticing from the churn data?
Well, I mean, look, I think well, like I said, there's some natural not Darwinism, but maybe like there's a little bit of like we were going to have a peel back, right? Because the buying cycles were much, everyone makes a really big deal about today's buying process, and they should, because it's much harder. But that also tells us why there were people with our software that didn't have the compelling business. I forget what you call them. We're talking about how you sell, like
right.
Articulate why this software, like the buyer can't say, I have this to do this. Yeah. And they're going to lose it because the CFO is going to say, okay, man, you got all this stuff. Like, what does this do for our business? And they can't articulate that. So we were going to lose that. I do think we were on this crazy gold rush. So we were like throwing deals over the fence. And so CS was always required to sort these things out, and it's been hard. And now, like, we're kind of paying the piper. It's like a double whammy. There's people that we're going to churn because of the CFO now looking at their portfolio of software, but also, man, I mean, like we were able to get away with a whole bunch of stuff for years, and now it's like CS has to really like be, there's a lot of really important things that we need to do on the CS side that they always knew, but they were always scrambling to sort of pick up broken glass and pieces. So,
I agree with that.
The poor CS team is still picking up glass and broken pieces.
Totally.
So it's like, it's the time we need to help them have the most process oriented. We need to enable them like we did the sales and SDR teams. We have all of this stuff. But we're not really doing, we're saying, go fix this. And by the way, here's a stick, here's a bow and arrow, like you can go see what you can do. So that I think those are the things I'm seeing. On the other hand, it's healthy. Like we have board level, executive level attention to retention and churn. I think, per what you said before, it's not necessarily the CS leader, but could we listen? Could we find out? Can we learn? Can sales have their stake in the game on the customer itself? Like these are really healthy. There's a lot of things that are really scary and really heartbreaking and hard in this moment. Then there's things that will just build better fundamentals going forward for the go-to-market.
So talking about that for a second. So what's really interesting is I think what CS is identifying is is your product really a must-have or a nice-to-have?
Yeah.
And they need to get into that core business value. It's, like, okay, the problem you were solving is interesting, but is it really fundamentally moving the needle for the business? Meaning, is it helping them to mitigate risk or cut costs or really drive top line revenue? And it's not. If it's not part of a company's strategic initiative, there's no reason for them to keep it right now, because most companies can't afford, because they're trying to cut back, regardless of like who you are and what you're what you're selling and who you're selling to. I mean, there are some growth opportunities, but I think it's a great opportunity to dig into the data more deeply on the customer success side to really truly understand who are your great customers and why, what industries, what sub industries, what industry segments, what was that tipping point that got them to go, oh my gosh, I have to have this. And then another great question to ask is like, well, what would happen if what would happen if we turn this off? What would happen if you no longer had access to this software? If they're like, well, we'd be okay, then guess what? You got to have some hard conversations. Are you building the right capabilities for your customers? Are you really solving a hard problem that they care about, or is it just kind of like, okay, this is cool, it's like the flavor of the month? Which when it was frothy, we were buying flavor of the month products because we wanted to test them out. We're like, oh, this is interesting. And now, like, no one's like, no, what are your 4 core tools that you're going to use to help manage and run and accelerate the business? Totally. So I love the thought around churn. By the way, I love double, triple, quadrupling down into that area.
I have one other for you, but before I do, this is important because so I don't know if the listeners know, like, you know, how your sort of business use case methodology and selling. And one of the things about it, so Doug sort of alluded to it, like there's like 3 or 4 things that actually move the needle in the business. We have to find what those are and tie back. And by the way, so we did a podcast on that during I mean, it was still a run up and you were still pounding your fist on the table. And back then, this was like maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, maybe. And like, I was like, well, you should listen to this podcast I did with Doug, and you should tell your sales reps, I don't care if they say they're going to buy tomorrow, because like you have to stop them.
Yeah,
and
totally.
You have to be able to help them. And now it's acute. Now, if your buyer can't go into the organization and tie back, like we think of it as sales. And it's part of our sales process that allows us to win the deals. But remember, that's always a byproduct of what the buyer's doing. And the buyer used to be able to go in the organization and say, hey, I really want this thing. It's like $80K. You cool? Yes. Right. Now it's like $10K and you got to run all these people. And if you can't
CFO.
If we can't take on the business upside or take on the business challenges that achieve the organization's goal, then we're going to lose that deal somewhere down the line. You might win the deal. Maybe it's tough right now, which I want to bring up is like win rates have
tanked.
Tanked.
But I got a response to that. I know how to double click into that or at least save it.
Okay, go.
Well, so here's the thing, like the pattern. So one of the patterns that you just called out is like, okay, you got to double click it. Everyone's got to like put a microscope on churn and what's really going on with your customers, your existing customers, what makes them happy, who's buying more, et cetera. Like spend an enormous amount of time there. I think the other thing that we've done is like there are other 2 areas that I've noticed that are like, these are common conversations I'm having with everybody. Number 1 is pipeline. Pipeline's really hard. It's really hard. Net new pipeline is hard. I think founders, let's level set our expectations and know that landing net new logos is significantly more difficult by a factor of 50 to 70% more difficult. So let's reorient our expectations. So what that means is we need to get much more maniacal about who's a fit and who's not a fit and why they are a fit. When it comes to pipeline, we have to take a much more kind of ABM approach. Even if you have a PLG motion, it's like, okay,
ideal customer profile. There is.
You just have to you have to be just honest about it. Are we targeting the right customers? And maybe it might require you to pivot a little bit to a different industry or sub-industry or different segment. That's one area. And I think the problem is from a pipeline perspective, like, look, everyone is struggling. And of course we know the other area to generate great pipeline is from your existing customers. Like that's the easiest place to generate pipeline. So rethink, should your CS team be handling expansion, upsell, renewals, or should you pull that back to your AE team? The way to answer that question is you got to start looking at rep execution. Because the reality is when the market starts to tank or it gets a little bit more difficult, you know what happens? People actually have to learn how to sell. We're talking fundamentals. We're talking prospecting, this BS that everybody's been doing out there, the spray and pray, and I don't care what tooling and technology or cheeky little gift you're using to try and get somebody to respond. This is about having a real business conversation. Yeah. So this is about understanding, and Craig, what you're alluding to is really truly understanding your customer's business and having a point of view about that business.
Big time.
And not be afraid to say, you know what? I don't think right now is a good time for us to be engaging because honestly, you're not really in the right position or we're not really the right fit for you. But everyone's too afraid to do that because we've got such a pipeline issue. But guess what? There's nothing worse than having bad pipeline, right? Yeah. A bunch of reps have overinflated pipeline. It's like, dude, clean this up because we know it's not real.
Good. Yeah.
And so as reps, like this is like the time to triple down on the fundamentals on how to have real business conversations, how to understand your customer's business and the pain points that they're really struggling with, and really truly understand why on earth, if they're only going to make one decision the rest of this year, why on earth would it be to work with you?
Yeah. So,
I told just real quick, I told one of our CROs the other day, I was like, you know what? I need you to tell every rep, and I will do it. I'll get on your next call. I don't care. I will get on the next call and I will tell every rep to tell their prospect, if they've got an opportunity, literally say this. Say, Craig, I've talked to, say, I've talked to folks, HR leaders like yourself. I talk to them on a regular basis every day. And here's the question that I have for you. Let's just say you believe that this problem is real, it's fundamental, and you got to solve it. And let's just say, for hypothesis' sake, that we might actually have something that might work. By the way, we may or may not. We're not talking about that. But the question is, how the hell are you going to get budget for it? Because the number of people that have gotten really excited and gotten down the process and get all the way down to the finish line, and the next thing you know, they take it up to the CFO, even though it's only 15, 20 grand. CFO's like, where's the business case? Why should I pay attention to this? Who cares? Right? And then what happens? The deal pushes, the deal pushes, the deal pushes.
Yeah, and it's still in the forecast, by the way.
I know, that's the worst part. So sales leaders, triple down on forecast accuracy. Are these real deals?
Yeah.
Ask your reps, like, why is this deal not going to close? And your reps need to be asking your customers, how the hell are you going to get budget for this? And if they say like, oh, don't worry, I got it. Yeah, that's when you say, time out. Yeah. The last 10 people that said that to me, guess what happened? Zip.
Yeah. By the way, I was talking to a RevOps guy, and I said, well, what's your biggest challenge? He's like, the can kicking is so bad that I'd rather lose a deal.
Yeah,
he's
totally.
Like, there's this pipeline, and to your point, actually, you made me think of something, which is, I think the CRO sales leader should basically say, go through the pipeline, and if the sales rep cannot articulate a business case in their own words for why the person's going to buy, then they've got 2 weeks to come back, or it's out of the pipeline.
Yeah, totally. And what I always say is like, no, they need to tell you why, in their words, they might want to change from what they're doing, and why now, right?
Yeah,
that's it. Boils down to it's fundamentals.
So yeah, just a couple other thoughts, man. That was an amazing riff by you. So one is the concept of the ideal customer profile is actually a CS methodology as well. You learn.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree.
Before this stuff all broke off, where now we have to save everybody, companies that were struggling with churn, like there was all this process stuff, but many of them solved it by figuring out who buys their software, who stays with it, who uses it, who grows, and making that their ICP. By changing who they sold, totally. They were able to have an effect on retention. So that's what
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
You brought up though is pipeline. This is what I was talking about with the founders. So look, they used to supplement pipeline numbers with outbound SDRs, and that it's tanked. It's tanked, and it's our fault.
We've done it to ourselves. By the way,
by
the way, it's Topo's fault. all that data that you were putting out, man, it was like, triple down on SDRs. SDRs crank. You sales ops crank out all these messages that are total doggy, dude.
Hey, man, you know what? Time it was working. We're paying the piper now. That's for sure. Yeah. And like I had Megan Eisenberg at our go-to-market summit, and she's just like, paid search isn't working for me. Website forms are down, like MQL creation on the site is down. It's like these were go-tos. These were easy that the veteran playbooks could walk in and go, you know what, I'll be able to drive 6,000 MQLs for you in 6 months. Guess what? They were. Guess what? Now they can't. It's not the same. And so what you brought up is really important, which is everyone thinks of the ideal customer profile process as ABM, and that's bad business. Everyone has a target. I mean, take the consumer markets. Those people could tell you who. I remember working with Crux. I don't know if you remember those guys, and they were telling these stories about the consumer markets, how they could say, we sell to, parents of 2 or more kids, right? One parent not working, and they should be able to see in 6 or more ads, and they will buy. And it's like, guys,
and they usually live within X many miles of a Target, and all that. Like, they know they got it nailed. That's the level of detail we need to understand our targets. Like, we need to understand them, like, just deep down inside. It's crazy.
I'm like, you guys. So if a consumer company that could sell to the whole world, right, and has tons of dark buyers out there, can figure this out, we can. Because guess what? In our world, we can look at a company that fits our profile, and we can learn about that. So, but that is on the PLG side, that is an amazing concept that we don't always. Is like the PLG entry point to turn into business. There's an ICP there, guys. I don't know what yours is, but like I do know there is one. There's a type of company. Yes, there's aha moments and there's things that will happen as they realize value in your product. But like, who do you spend more time on? Who do you parachute humans in on? Who do you who do you ensure, right, comes back and makes certain moves in the product? There's an ideal customer profile part of that process.
Right. However, though, you need to understand, like, no matter what, you got to understand when somebody's in the product, what are the signals that indicate they're in the product and they're likely going to stay in the product, or they're likely going to churn, right? So you got to just know that. What are the things? If they don't do X by X date, then they're likely not going to stick around, right? Or if they show that they do Y within, a certain number of hours, awesome, get somebody on the phone, help assist them. Again, it's just a totally different motion nowadays. It feels like it's no longer this. We can't take this lazy spray and pray approach. We can't be lazy with our emails and our outreach. It's amazing how many emails I still get today. And I'm like, dude, have you not paid attention over the last 5 years about how to be more targeted and how to be more specialized and how you craft your communication? It's insane. It's like, what rock have you been hiding under?
I know. It's amazing. By the way, you did make me think of a story when you were talking about like sort of the sales leaders sort of drawing the line in the sand on deals. Years ago, I was doing work with NetSuite, and they were the most maniacal qualifiers on the face of the earth. I mean, they were ABM before ABM. They were like, these industries are the only ones to sell to. Yeah.
NetSuite and Oracle, baby. They're like, two peas in a pod.
Yeah.
Oracle's intense.
And then, they did massive, if they could get you into a demo, they would customize the living crap out of it. They had one of the highest conversion rates out of the demo I'd ever seen. But what they did before was most important, which was they did all the things that you were talking about. And I was talking to a sales leader, and because I was doing a win-loss, and I talked to one of their wins, and the guy tells me, he's like, oh my God. So I reach out to NetSuite, I talk to the SDR, we do all this stuff. Then I get we schedule a meeting for them to come in. Sales leader calls me and says, you know what, we're not coming in. And I'm like, excuse me, I want to buy your stuff. He's like, I don't believe that you would buy our stuff.
I love that.
And the guy's
challenge him, man.
Yeah. And he's telling me the story. He's like, so I had to spend 30 minutes telling him, and this guy is asking me, well, what's the business case? What is it? How is it going to affect you? And it was incredible. Now, buyers these days wouldn't appreciate that. The point is, he told sales and the buyer, we're not going to do this unless you show me, and I got to feel really good. By the way, it was a huge deal for them. Great deal, great customer. And
it reminds me, Craig, from a metric standpoint, that it's really important that founders and go-to-market leaders really understand the nuances of cost per customer. What does it cost you to land a customer? What does it cost you to expand that customer? You got to know that, we've all talked about, CAC and CAC to LTV ratios because that's important for investors. No, screw that. How much does it cost you to land a customer? And are these customers profitable enough for you? Because guess what? We live in a business now where we're focusing on fundamentals again. We're focusing on unit economics, and we care as investors about your path to profitability. Doesn't mean you have to be profitable now, but you got to be thinking about it like, what's it going to take for us to get there? And so, like, if you're not clear about what does it cost you to land a customer, so that's going to take into consideration a whole lot of nuances, then you don't really have a handle on the business. And it's interesting. So if you want, let's switch gears here and talk about like kind of new approaches or models or things that you've seen some of your companies do that you think are really interesting. I will tell you, so my buddy Dustin, who's the CRO over at Affinity, we've been geeking out on this new approach that is hyper focused on efficient growth. We're no longer in the world of growth at all costs. Now, of course, this is always going to be predicated on what does the board decide that the company needs to do. Okay, we need to maintain our 30% growth. We need to, cut costs and actually just stay flat because honestly, that's some of this. That's some of the suggestions for the year, for this upcoming year. So it depends on what the board basically says your target is. But let's just say like, hey, we need to grow. We'd love you to grow 10, 15, 20% next year, but we need you to do that efficiently. So then what about this? So the growth at all cost model previously was like, let's say you're at 10 million and the goal is to get to 20. What do? You go out and you hire a bunch of AEs at a certain quota. So you've got enough quota capacity plus some overage to get you to your number, right? You bake in ramp. So let's say, got $1 million quotas. You want to add 10 million. Well, okay, you've got net dollar retention. Let's say you only need to add 9 million, right? But they're ramping. So you wouldn't go hire 9 reps. You can maybe hire 12 because they got to ramp, and you probably hire them before, you actually start. This new approach, we're calling it the earn it model, is totally different. Your team has to earn the right to add quota capacity to the team itself. And there are 3 levers in this. So it makes it, there's incentives for everybody. So let's say you're the VP of sales. You give your frontline sales leader, say, tell you what, if your team hits their number, 100% of their number, 2 quarters in a row, you automatically get a new headcount, or in some cases 2 headcount, but you don't take on the quota. Ooh. VP of sales takes on the quota, but RVP, you now have more people with less quota. Awesome. Okay, that's incentive. So here's the other thing, AEs. If you hit your number 2 quarters in a row, you automatically get promoted. So you got to create AE1, AE2, AE3, AE4, AE5 step change, right? So now we eliminate the fact, like, it's up to you, AE. You hit 100% of your number 2 quarters in a row, automatic promotion. Here's the other little variable for that RVP. You hit your team quota 100% 2 quarters in a row. However, you also need to make sure that 80% of your team is at 80% attainment. Ooh, there's another little variable. If people drop below 80%, you swarm them. Because oftentimes enablement content is this like generic content for enterprise, for mid-market, for commercial. And it's like, here, go consume this. But the reality is if 1 person drops below, or 2 people, then the RVP, the enablement person, like maybe a peer, somebody else who's been wildly successful, swarms them. They consume the content that's designed for AE1, AE2, AE3, whatever their level is. And then they've got they basically have a month to start to show progress, right? If we can get them back up to 80%, then they're good. If at the end of the quarter, or the end of 3 months, they can't get back up to 80%, well, then they're out.
Yeah.
So you create a system to where it's like, look, if the team hits the number, then we get to start adding quota, but we get to add capacity, but we don't take on quota. And the reality is because what you're doing is you're building an efficient business that allows you to earn the additional capacity versus you saying like, here, just go hire to it. I'm like, great. Because what happens when you hire those nine reps? They're all going to be operating at like, I don't know, 50% attainment, right? And so the cost basis is insane. What if you only added 3 reps because you spent all your time and money and resources to ensure that you had enough pipeline for everyone and you got everybody performing at 80% or greater? Oh, you're crushing it.
Yeah.
Now you don't need 9 reps or 12 reps. Maybe you only need 5.
Yeah. By the way, that story you just told, very strategic and amazing. And I had very tactical things that I've seen there. So I'm like, you're telling me this story. I'm like, wait, there was a couple things I did want to mention that are very tactical, low tactical. So one is, by the way, on the outbound SDR issue, I have been playing a lot with like we're investors in Reggie. I've been playing with the generative AI, taking me to the first level and then me editing and it's helped me so much because it used to take me 5 hours to do outbound.
Right. Totally.
The 100%.
100%.
Number 2 has been like on the pipeline side, just on the marketing side, we just talked about all those things that don't work. You basically now have to get your content and point of view out into the world without gates. And like LinkedIn has been amazing. I mean, have you seen Scott Albro, my old business partner on LinkedIn?
Oh, dude, yeah, he's crazy. He's all over it.
You haven't even launched a product. He's got a huge.
I know. I know,
Well,
because he's got a point of view about AI and rep productivity, and he's got thoughts about it, and he's sharing his thoughts, but he's also open to feedback and ideas, and he's engaged in a dialogue, and that's exactly what brands need to do today, as well as individuals, by the way.
Right. No, absolutely. I've just been like on the really because I gotta come with some solutions. I'm just like, well, what are you doing on LinkedIn? It's like, well, we follow people and we use Navigator. It's like, no, dude, like your story has to get out there. And like, that's one of the places where we know business people go, are basically hanging out. And, so like, when you just gave me that amazing story, I was like, well, I hadn't sort of prepared to think of like a big swinging one. I was just been like sort of consumed with these like very, very tactical things.
Dude, they all matter. They all add up to big movements. I mean, it's just it's everyone's struggling with all the little things right now, too, honestly. But hold on a second. So I want to go back to this Reggie AI thing and for outbound, because here's the thing that I think I worry about. Look, everybody thinks it's like AI is the answer right now, and the reality is AI is missing context. Right. Mm-hmm. So you can't just go to a Reggie or a Lavender or any other tool and be like, hey, write me an email for this person and send it out. If you don't stop and take a minute and actually have a framework for how you're thinking about how you want to engage with somebody, right, and what's important to them and how you actually build that connection, credibility, and demonstrate some level of empathy, then it doesn't matter what technology, what AI can do for you, because the reality is all it's basically going to do is regurgitate a bunch of stuff that we're going to be able to see on the buyer's end and go, this is A, either written by AI, and B, it's totally not relevant. So delete.
Yeah, I agree. But you should view it as an enabler. That's why I've been playing with it. I'm a much better editor than a creator. What it has done for today, which is where we are.
That's a great comment.
So number one is it is like the most usable of the AI tech out there. Is like you can do this. If you send only that message, what Doug is bringing up is an issue. Like you can't do that. It's not. They might actually get a very similar message. What you have to do is you have to take that structure and use that and take what you want from it, and then you have to add your flavor to it. What it's done for me is just sped me up, because I've always spent that time trying to personalize, and it takes me forever.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Gives me the bits and pieces so that I can be faster. And that, man, that's worth a lot right now.
Dude, I tell you what, man, like I want you to go on Twitter and LinkedIn and just write this comment. Everybody write this. What AI enables you to move from creator to editor.
Yes.
It's the reality, right? So like you don't have to create as much. You still do need to create, like don't give it all up to technology, but now you can edit at a scale that is significantly better, faster, and more valuable from a time perspective. But the interesting thing is, the other suggestion I would say is like, and John Barrows always says this, but like, when you're doing outbound, focus on one persona in one industry for an entire week.
Yeah.
Like, because the problem is you context switch all the time. You're like, oh, I'm going to just blast these people and these people and these people because it's all by target company. It's like, no. What if it was just like, all I'm going to do this week is I'm going to target CIOs and I'm going to target them in a high-tech manufacturing, and that's it. Maybe it's a day or two, but the reality is what it allows you to do is refine. When you get a hit or a response or an open or whatever, you're like, oh, that's interesting. Make a note of it. But when you go like, I'm going to a CIO at a high-tech manufacturing company, and then I'm going to, a director of application development at a oil and gas company, totally different.
Yeah,
totally different, and it requires more horsepower to context switch.
Totally, I love that. I actually wouldn't say for a week. If we look at like the successful SaaS companies, they had an entry point. Like I was at Togo, so like the biggest compliment a company could have is say, well, we keep selling to the same user over and over, and we want to expand. I'm like, that's why you grew, because your SDRs, whether you like it or not, I know
you're hyper-focused.
Yeah, the enterprise leader comes in and goes, well, wait, we have to call the C-level. And it's like, no, man, you have a way in the door that everyone has figured out. Take it and beat on it, because you've got so much leverage now because you understand how to get to them. And I just, like, I tell people, it's like, let's not wish, let's not hope. If by the way, your product serves someone who can't wait to talk to you about the business issues related to this, let's find them and let's go to all of them in the world. And you will be so much better. It's just so much easier.
Yes. Focus, my man. Focus. All right, we're running out of time here, but what I want to do is I want to leave with some parting words, and I have one, and then I'll let you pontificate here. So I'll give you a second to think about it. But the thing that I would suggest everybody consider is, and we've always known this, is like, it's kind of like a secret sauce. But at the end of the day, your people are your secret weapon, right? AI, great, interesting. Product, amazing, great, interesting. Your people are the ones that put it all together and make it all happen. The thing that I would highly suggest is you start doing a little bit more deep dive assessment on who you have and who you need. So the people that you have, do you have the right people? Do you have the right people for this market? Do they have the right level of hunger, creativity, grit? Do they have the right level of experience to actually navigate these murky waters, to have these strategic business conversations? And the reality is they're going to be tough conversations, but you need to have it. And if you don't have the right people, then you got to go out and find the right people, because the people are going to get you through this tough time right now, without question. So be really, really mindful. Leaders, lead. Be honest with your teams about, what works and what doesn't work and what you need from them. Set expectations, and just remember, we're in a new era right now. We got to get back to the basics and fundamentals.
Yeah. Well, I would just
parting words, Craig.
I would just follow you. Grit is everything right now in early stage. Obviously all the things you talked about are part of making a great employee, but like you've got to be able to test for grit.
Yeah.
You just do. And like, everyone comes to me, look at this resume. I'm like, where's the grit? They haven't had to get down there and go close their own deal in 15 years. We can't afford that. We need to know the grit. And by the way, sometimes the grit is from someone who worked at companies that failed, like 4 failed companies over the last.
Totally.
But we got to.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I want to know what you learned. I want to know what you're going to do differently. I want to know why you picked the companies that didn't work out. It's like, do you have a bad picker? Like, what's going on here? By the way, just a little note on that. Go to Angela Duckworth and take the grit scale test if you want to know how gritty you are.
I'm going.
Yeah, do it. Craig, we got to wrap. We've gone over it. Eduardo here is like adding more time. He's like another 5 minutes, but it's time's up here, and I'm sure we all got a bunch of stuff to go and do, and we could ramble on for hours upon hours. This is a blast, man.
Oh man, I miss you, man. It was great to hang. I'll use these opportunities to go hang out with you anytime.
Yes, anytime, buddy. Anytime. I love it. Appreciate you, my friend.
Appreciate
Good luck out there, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.